I remember a few years back, and I was in the, this will make you laugh, I was in the queue at Morrison's.
Yeah.
And three people in front of me were talking about estate agents. And what came out of her mouth was something like, well, don't use that company, far too flashy. It needs to be in the middle of London. And they're far too expensive. And they were talking about David Jordan estate agents.
Yeah. Testing. Welcome everybody. Today we have David Jordan of David Jordan Estates on. He's going to be talking to us about his kind of peaks and troughs and the ways that he manages his business through these turbulent times in the world of estate agency. But what strikes me is that we really need to try and figure out a way that he can level out those peaks and troughs and protect himself and put kind of force fields and moats around his business to make it harder for people to replicate and protect himself against new legislation that is bound to be coming his way very shortly. So let's see how we can help David here, learn a little bit about his business and see what his journey's about. Morning, David. So thank you very much. Today we've got David Jordan from David Jordan Estates on the show, and we're going to go through some of your questions and bits. But before we start that, tell us a bit about David Jordan, yourself, the actual business and the rest of it. Obviously, I know what you do, but for the audience, tell us a bit about the history.
Sure, actual fact, 20 years this year. David Jordan Estate Agents has been up and running, which is quite an exciting year for us. Founded a business in 2004, having worked in the corporate world of estate agents, and started when I was 16. And in 2004, I decided to go my own way and form the company in a way, in a formula that I felt was the right way. And as we chatted earlier, my philosophy on that is employ the right people, get the right people in, do the right jobs, the job they enjoy, and let it breathe the way through. And so far, we're doing good. And market share is going up all the time, which I'm pleased about, even in these times. So the future looks good, Matt. Yeah,
definitely. And you're primarily based kind of in the Seaford area, although I know you've kind of doubled with other branches and you cover the sort of southeast, Eastbourne to Brighton type areas.
We do. And actually, this is a topic of conversation on Thursday or Friday where we found ourselves doing an evaluation in Jevington. I was over near Meaton in Eastbourne, Carlisle Road. A couple of things going on in Peacehaven, Saltdean, Howsham. We contrast to 20 years ago where maybe estate agents had offices scattered beyond all sorts of radius. We can, we're based in Seaford now, we can cover quite a distance from where we are. So we don't need to have such a strength-hold market share just on Seaford. Sure. We can get into surrounding towns and villages because we've got the resources to do it. Yeah. So, and we're pleased about that, actual fact. So, we can do the lettings side of the business is going very, very well, headed up by Dawn Thompson and Steve. That's thriving too, which is a very, very important part of the business.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. So I know I've got your questions here, and obviously you're quite a big character in the local community. Big in character.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
But before we get going, I always like to ask, what were you like at school? So young David.
I struggled badly for whatever reasons, but I struggled badly. My ability to pay attention, listen, and retain information just wasn't great, Matt. So I had to do something about that, perhaps when I turned 15, 16 and 17 to make up for it. But didn't enjoy school, which is a shame. So that kind of philosophy I try and instill to my kids because I want them to kind of do it slightly different, pay attention, learn, because you give yourself a much better foundation. But I was a bloody nightmare at school. As soon as I got there off the bus, I wanted to get home or get down a sweet shop or do everything else other than learn. French, maths, English, the lot. I couldn't do it. But, things happen for a reason, maybe.
It's funny, I find quite a lot of the time, sort of entrepreneurial or business owner type people have not done particularly well at school. I know it's kind of, if you read about in the books, it's sort of a fairly common trait, actually, the difficulty of learning and retaining school information, and then having that entrepreneurial, almost school of life type ability is quite common, I think. I don't know if you come across that with other people that you associate with.
You probably read the books and read the scenarios of different individuals out there that I have, and it's amazing. There is a bit of a pattern, isn't there? Does that come from the side of it where, as a child, you're exhausted about being told what to do, but you couldn't achieve that, and being told you've got to do this, you've got to do that, and then suddenly you maybe answer this better than me. You get to the sort of years and you think, right, boom, do it myself now. So you sort of go off, like a fast car and try and do everything yourself the way, because you've been told what to do for so many years. I think there's elements of that. You think it's on the top.
It's definitely like a case of your ability to learn and retain information is different to your kind of person that gets on well at school. They can sit down, focus, and the rest of it, whereas your mind is like a whirling thing of like distraction and the rest of it, and not really seeing the benefit in what you're actually doing at that moment in time. So it's not really ticking a box in your mind, whether that's right or wrong. Like, you've got to have some basic skills, but you get to your kind of GCSE type levels or O levels or whatever it is, and you haven't got the focus and attention for that. But your attention and focus when you find the thing is like completely just like you hyper focus on something, and setting up a business or understanding it, the way the dynamics of it and it runs, and like people's opinions and views, customer relations, all that kind of stuff. I think is often a skill that those kind of weaker at school people possess, that hyper focus. And I find that a lot of the people that I would have thought would have done really well at school, that got all the good grades, have maybe settled into, kind of a normal job, if you like, and had a fairly kind of bog standard wage or progression through their career, because they hyper focused on that kind of school environment. Yes. They don't possess that kind of entrepreneurial type skill in there, and I think there's definitely a correlation. I mean, there's loads of books on it, but
there is.
I just find it fascinating.
I think the fear. I always remember the first month where I resigned from my corporate position, and I was in a studio flat at the time, Matt, and I thought, well, how the hell am I going to pay the mortgage? I've just found some funds to buy out another business, and I thought, right, okay, what am I going to eat for the next month? Pizza, small glass of wine, bread in the morning, another wine, God, council tax. Well, how am I going to pay for all this? I've got income. I haven't got, but the adrenaline and the fear of setting yourself a challenge to say, right, well, I'm going to have to sell this many houses in the next 12 months. Otherwise, I'm out of here. I'm gone. There's no doubting it. You didn't have a choice. And I think maybe that the fear, enjoying that slight fear was important.
Yeah, definitely. I think it really, it drives you rather than turns you away. Yeah. Like, it's weird. It's like, it almost like, as an entrepreneur, it's like, I wouldn't go as far to say like the fear turns you on, as opposed to most people are turned off by that.
I tell you something very interesting. No sooner had we opened up, I had this little old lady in Seaford. She opened the door and she said, "My dear, you've opened up in a recession. You must be mad. This isn't going to work." And my whole body just shuddered, and I thought, okay.
Thanks for the confidence booster.
She was trying to be kind, but
Okay. Oh, we'll just move on to some of your questions. So see if we can kind of work through those and maybe thrash some things out. So the first one was, what are your business goals for the next year? And you've just put stay alive. I'm guessing that's all right. I'm guessing obviously at the moment, as it's, I don't suppose it's any news to anyone that the property market is a little sluggish at best in places.
I was referring to being a bit silly there, but the business is more going to stay alive. The next year is interesting, actually. We're looking to different ways of investing in a business. To the market share for us has grown to a level which we're really happy about. But of course, you've got to sustain that, and you've got to keep going. You've got to look at new ideas and whatever. And we were chatting earlier, weren't we, about costs and versus investment. And I think now is the time. Got a large team of 10, including myself. We'll make sure the team is supported. So this next 12 months, we'll make sure the right people are doing the right job. Invest into resources in the business that people will recognize the brand, give us a chance, call us, use our services. So that really looks after itself. And lettings is one of those, as I said to you before. The amount of business that Dawn and Steve are doing at the moment is incredible. I think that is because people want to use us. But the next 12 months is the now, Matt. It's the now. And I don't always think you can look too far forward. And I know one of your questions is 3 to 5 years. That's fine. But I think every business does need to focus on the now, because that will look after next week and next month and next year.
I think people greatly overestimate what they can achieve in a year, but totally underestimate what they can achieve in 10 years. And it's interesting about your growth plans and your target market, because obviously as an outsider, I know we do property, but we're not in the same space. I would look and I'd say locally, you've got kind of like, you've got your national companies, and then there's really only, in my opinion, 2 kind of local competitors. One has obviously done fairly well, and yourself. And it strikes me like I don't know if you feel this way, but your niche, if you like, in your business seems to be doing much better with those kind of high end properties. As opposed to like a general broad, like I see a lot of the time on the Rightmove, that kind of like 750 to £1 million house you've got. And I'm wondering if you have done the analysis on why people choose you over, say, that competitor, because I know that competitor's also done their new kind of more upmarket. Like they've changed their logo a bit for some of their sites, haven't they?
Yeah, funny enough, I personally, and I do generally mean this, I personally don't look too much at the competition. Maybe I should, but I don't. I try and look at ourselves. Actual fact, I was talking to somebody on Thursday, and I said, if I can get 2 or 3 first-time buyers every week, exponentially, that's going to mean they will get 4 other transactions also on the go. And I talking to Danielle earlier about this actually, and saying to her, first-time buyers, we need them. So answering your question, we don't want to be dealing with the 6, 7, 8, 900,000, $1 million too much. We will deal with it as a result of, we've got a young couple this week buying a bungalow through us, and they're first-time buyers. It is happening. If we can get more first-time buyers to buy the smaller valued properties, that will get the mid-range and the upper range and the upper range. The branding we've got, we might put on 2 studio flats next week, and we might put on 2 rather large older style houses. I don't have a preferred affiliation to either, because both are important in terms of future business, the customer. Matt, we sold a beach hut about 3 weeks ago to acting for customers who owned it, who I think the world of, and they know who they are. We had their house on the market. They bought something through us. They're letting something through us. And they're incredibly nice people, Andrew and Alison. And, acting for the beach hut for a few £100 fee, I was quite happy with that. Yeah. Because that's the customer. Yeah. As opposed to the property, it's more the customer and what they can do for us over 3, 4, 5 years,
Yeah, you need that longevity of a customer and the rest of it. And I always think that, in my opinion, your like kind of niche is that slightly more upmarket, like the way your business comes across and approaches, as opposed to your more national companies who are a bit more generic, like you're giving that personal approach or whatever. And it kind of distinguishes you from maybe the local competition a little bit. And I wonder if, like, only from my own observations, as to why obviously you've got this broad market from a beach hut to £1 million house, but you seem to have quite a lot of the lion's share of the more upmarket stuff. So obviously I'm guessing people are coming to you because they know they're going to get that bespoke.
Maybe, but I remember a few years back, and I was in the, this will make you laugh, I was in the queue at Morrison's. Other brands are available, sorry. Morrison's. And somebody three people in front of me were talking about estate agents, and what came out of her mouth was something like, well, don't use that company, far too flashy. It needs to be in the middle of London, and they're far too expensive. And they were talking about David Jordan estate agents.
Yeah.
Now, far too flashy, middle of London, far too expensive. I don't know. That's obviously a perception, but I did smile and think, that's okay. I'd rather be that side than
I suppose you have to
scruffy
figure
or
out
cheap, you know?
Yeah, I suppose you've got to figure out what kind of market you're trying to do, because you can go for a broad market, but then I guess that doesn't distinguish you from the competition, does it?
Absolutely.
And I think in a market, I mean, your when we talk about your 10-year plan, you just said keep your hair, because I think that, you know, to have a niche and the rest of it. I'm a big fan of having like a small amount of money from a lot of people, which is really your lettings department. That's very low drip feed of income, but it's very consistent, and that keeps your business alive. But actually, as a brand, I think if you figure out like kind of where you're aiming and what you're going for and your niche, it does set you apart from your competition locally, because they're all going after the same market, aren't they?
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with being the most expensive person or whatever, or perceived to be like that. You know, Apple have made a very good job of being overpriced. A lot of people who use their competitors, Samsung or whatever, will say like, oh, they're much cheaper and they're more flexible and I prefer the Google store. But people still buy the Apple because it has that kind of kudos factor
branding
to it. They know they're going to get that service that they come and love and expect from an iPhone. You know, if you can kind of replicate that in a smaller way locally through the estate agents thing, I think that's quite a good, because we live in the southeast. You know, people that watch this up north will probably not resonate with like £1 million 4-bed detached house with no view or anything. That's kind of what they cost in some of the places around here. I mean, if you want a fairly sizable house, you're not going to see a lot of change at 650 around here, really.
Absolutely. Average house price is probably for 450,000.
So to capture that market, and then presumably, you know, then if, like you say, if you're in a chain, then you're also kind of touching upon that first time buyer market, and people get that kind of brand. I mean, I assume you get this as well, where they stick with a brand. Like, you know, when they go into Volkswagen and they buy a Volkswagen when they're like young and they haven't got kids, and then they have kids, and then they go up to the next model, like whatever that is, the Passat or something, and then they have their midlife crisis, and they might get the convertible, and then they come back to the 4x4 or whatever. But they kind of stayed with Volkswagen through that service period. So you have the longevity of a customer then from their kind of beginning to their end, if you like, that downsizing bit at the end.
I mean, we can't claim all the business. I mean, there'll be reasons why they'll use other people. You know, the valuation stage, which you know very much about, is paramount. You know, we might go in and we may have the best resources, we may have the best advertising skills, we may have the most experience and creative staff. But if I valued the property £50,000 less than somebody else, there's a chance I won't be given the business. Yeah, maybe I've been accurate, but £50,000 is a lot for someone to think they might be losing out on. So we may not get the business. Yeah. But so there's other factors there, of course, in terms of market share
But it's then explaining to people to be realistic that you are going to be able to sell their property at that price rather than it sit on the market, and they lose that wow factor when it hits right move and you get those initial viewings. I see so many properties disappear and then come back 6 months later trying to recreate that wow factor after they've kind of had a stab at it and it hasn't really panned out.
We're going on to then a different journey, because if you wave money at people, it's very hard for them to turn it down. That if I value something, as I did the other day, I think it was £650,000, and they said thank you, but we've been told more from somebody else, quite a bit more actually. You got to run with that, and you got to stick to your principles. You look at comparable evidence. Look at the fact that if it doesn't sell in the first 6, 8, 10 weeks. Actually, it's going to be chasing shadows. Actually, buyers are clever. They've got all the resources, all the information they can possibly want to make a conscious decision what it's worth. There's no point in us putting it too high. The old adage years ago was, well, you can always go up, you can always go high and then come down a bit. Those days are certainly gone. You know, the property will catch a cold it goes on too high.
So I suppose we'll move on to your kind of like, what's your biggest challenges achieving those goals? So your goals are wanting to increase your market share and obviously maybe tick that kind of broader market really. And then, you know, do that niche stuff at the top end. So what's the kind of biggest hurdles that you're going to face, do you think, over the next kind of few years or so, or in getting to them?
Yeah, no, I'm watching carefully because we've got an inkling that the state agency might well be looked at rather more seriously than it has done that in the next sort of 5-6 years. I'm talking about regulation.
Yeah.
I'm talking about what, you know, different governments are suggesting, or different parties are suggesting. I'm talking about what our role will be. And if you compare it to, say, 20, 30 years ago, there's a house and a window, go and book a viewing, there you go, agree a price, off we go, in solicitors' hands. I think we will play a much bigger, busier role in not too distant future. What that will be exactly, I'm not sure. But in terms of the business, I've got to maintain giving the staff the biggest support I can, making sure that they have the time of their lives on a daily basis. The growth of the business will come about from that, because if you've got your team working hard for you and being creative and getting more customers, it will look after itself. Do I want to grow the business even further? Yeah, of course I do, but I don't know that I'm, not to say I'm not ambitious, I am. I don't know that I would want to make an uncalculated decision to grow the business in 5-10 years, because I don't really know what's going to be around the corner. I'd rather let that happen naturally by giving it everything on a daily basis. You might say, and you'd be right to, you might say, well, David, you know, if you have a longer term vision, you're going to do this, you do that, or you do that. Maybe you're probably right. But we talked earlier about, you know, do you want more offices? And I said, well, not really, no. I mean, you said to go open up an office in Brighton, I couldn't think of anything worse.
Yeah.
So it depends if what you...
I think the introduction of more regulations is probably a given, in all honesty, for lettings, for property in general, and the estate agency as well. But I think that's a wonderful opportunity for you to grab a slice of market share right now.
Absolutely.
Because by becoming regulated, you effectively are putting a force field around your business, because it will make the barrier to entry higher. I mean, we can come on to maybe like what you can do to insulate the business through the highs and lows of things later. But, you know, if you take the buy-to-let industry, for instance, when they brought in Section 24 legislation, that's kind of really disencouraged anybody for doing a buy-to-let property in their own name as a pension, or like mum and dad, where they, you know, I mean, you must have come across them all the time, mum and dad, and they've got 1 or 2 buy-to-lets because their granddad did it and all that sort of stuff. But now it's like extremely unprofitable, because you get shoved into the 40% tax bracket fairly easily if you've got a semi-decent job. But I think the move towards like company ownership or whatever has effectively put like a force field around you, or a moat, or whatever you want to call it. And it protects you, because it's becoming a higher barrier to entry, which is only good if you're going to have more regulation. If you can then get through that and be like, right, we're highly regulated now, you're going to wean out all of your competitors that are too small to cope with that, or maybe near their retirement age or whatever, and they might sell up and go. And also people are going to look and say, well, I can't sell my house on Gumtree or Facebook anymore, or whatever, you know, to my mate down the pub. You get rid of all those sources that come around and leaflet drop for those more dilapidated or unloved properties, because it will become more complicated. So it's an exciting time. And I think if you can embrace that properly, that's really going to put you on a good
Completely
footing.
agree. I completely agree. As to what level will be regulated, who knows? But I do worry.
It's
still.
also a perceived level as well, though. So if you go, actually, like anyone can set up a company and buy property for it. In fact, it's fairly easy, but it's perceived that the interest rates are higher. It's perceived it's more complicated. You've got accountancy fees and the rest of it. If you let all of that get in the way, then that's when you're building moats, like a perceived moat rather than an actual real one.
Yeah, I agree with you. But it'll be interesting. I obviously, whatever happens this year with change of government or whatever. But what I'm hearing is, I think I mean, the prerequisite of coming into the industry and having to take some exams is quite normal, isn't it, Matt?
Yeah.
In most industries.
Yeah, most industries you've got to go and do that. But that's their barrier to entry. You can't just go and be a solicitor or be an accountant or whatever, or be a surveyor. You have to go and get those qualifications.
If you look at
entrepreneur's probably the only one that you probably doesn't
not
qualify for that.
But I mean, if you actually collared a random estate agent somewhere in the south east England and said, right, consumer protection rights, what are they? Well, not many would know.
And there's another USP for you because, when you're selling to those people, they might say, oh, you're a bit higher. You understand all your regulations. If you tell them that, then that helps you on that journey of being niche and kind of, cutting out that bit of the market really that you're you're like the professional estate agents essentially.
We try.
So I hope you're really enjoying today's podcast and getting stuck in the information that we're kind of weaning out of our audience here and our guest. But if you want to come on the podcast, all you need to do is go and apply for it. So you can email info@matthewcox.biz. That's Matthew with 2 T's, as always. info@matthewcox.biz, and the lovely Hayley or somebody will pick up your email. They'll give you a form to fill in with some preloaded questions and some information, and then we'll get you on the show and we'll try and figure out your goals and setting and whatever it is you want to achieve. And we're also launching a website as well, which should be live by the time you see this. So that's matthewcox.biz, and the form's on there as well if you want to have a think about the questions beforehand. We'd love to get you on. So if you want to get on this show, just like my guest today, please go and head on over to one of those websites or ping us an email and we'll gladly have you on the show. So, David, challenges in reaching your kind of goals. We'll touch upon those really. So obviously we've looked at your goals that you want to kind of keep the staff happy, continue to grow the business in a sort of sustainable manner, and then get ready for these regulations. So what are your kind of goals, your kind of challenges in reaching those, I suppose?
That's a difficult one. I suspect you can look at the housing market, you can look at the instability out there at the moment, cost of living. Is that going to be a challenge for us to seek buyers, seek sellers, and transaction levels to improve? There's another side to it, Matt, and that is once the property is sale agreed, you've got a hell of a job to get it through to completion at the moment. We are in a very antiquated conveyancing house moving process, which probably hasn't changed for 100 years. You forgive me for saying maybe a tad less. That's a challenge in itself. And we spoke earlier about regulation. There's a lot of estate agents that just put the sale in hand and then off we go to the next one. So another one. And of course, that process between sale agreed and the day they move in or move out is so complex. It's such a long process. And if you look at the product, the bricks, the mortar, and you stop and think, gosh, that'll take 3 months to change ownership. What's all that about? That can't be right. And I think the challenge for a lot of estate agents is the pipeline of sales you have, and the customer's expectations they're ingrained in thinking, well, it takes a couple of months to go through, doesn't it? So their expectancy is that's how long it will go through. I think one of the challenges the industry has is to try and get the house moving process moving faster, or reducing the time length of the transaction. Now, that may not be a reflection of what challenges are ahead, but it should be. And if there's anything that new government coming in or existing government should do, is how can we speed that process up? There's too many antiquated systems. Land registry has been around for how many years? The planning, the building regulations, that's far too complex. Paper trails and questions.
Is there nothing that you can do sort of in advance to speed the process up? Because sitting on the other side, I think you're right that it is quite slow, but it seems to often be reliant upon solicitors going, oh, we've got to order these searches, we've got to do this, we've got to do that. And I know there's companies like Searches UK that the solicitors use to order their like packs from, if you I'm just wondering, like, as a sort of USP in terms of to speed it up for yourselves, whether or not there was anything out there you could add, as an additional source of revenue for you guys, but also to assist that process along by actually almost lining it up for people. You know, if you could download some of those documents or order those searches and give them to the solicitor or offer that service, it would then speed up the process.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that, because whilst the home information pack at its time was frowned upon, perhaps looking back now, maybe some of the contents of it wasn't so bad after all.
Yeah.
We can say to the client that this is maybe your expectations of how long it would take to go through. But actual fact, there's a way of in your mindset to make it go through. Possibly the biggest challenge we have is that every component, solicitor, mortgage company, buyer, seller, surveyor, their expectancy is we can rest on our laurels. We don't need to put that survey in for another 4 weeks because the sale will probably take 9 weeks. So we don't have to worry about that. Well, that mindset does need to change. So you can say to a buyer or a seller from the beginning of the transaction, well, I'll tell you what, we're going to get this through in 4 weeks. What's up? What's all that about? You can't do that. Why not? So I think that is something we can instill and say, look, there's no reason why, I don't want to break any world records here, but why is the search taking 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks sometimes? Why is the probate department taking forever to issue a grant of probate? That's another matter altogether. HMRC, look at the delays there. Mortgage companies, how long they take to do the underwriting, and at what stage do they do the underwriting? At what stage does mortgage offer come out? So I think that is in itself for the industry something that we all need to look at. But some things are beyond our remit, Matt.
Yeah, I think they are. I'm just wondering, like, that helps the process up if there are some things that you can do, but also it is an additional source of revenue. Obviously, and you want to invest in the business, invest in your staff and the rest of it. And I think coming on to something we were talking about in the break, where a lot of business owners, they'll have like a retained profit, say, from your trading activities, and they will go and buy sort of buy-to-let property or something as a good investment. But strikes me that I know you've got some buy-to-let, but you've also are quite keen on investing the money back into the business for the staff. And I think that is a really excellent way of growing the business. It is a more entrepreneurial, risky thing to do because inherently we're worried, you know, what if you go and employ this new person, it doesn't pan out, you've kind of like lost that 50 grand or 40 or whatever you're going to pay them. I'll put it into a buy-to-let and it will give me a kind of £500 a month return. But if that person can give you like, you know, £2,000-3,000 a month return, then obviously that's a lot higher risk there, isn't it? So I don't know how you see those kind of challenges in your business in terms of, because you're like David Jordan, you're like the face of it, aren't you?
Yeah, indeed. On a personal level, if you, and I go back to investment versus costs, and they're miles apart, but sometimes they come a bit too close in aligned. On a personal level, if you invest money outside of the business model, so your example of buy-to-let, that might help the future gain and the asset value of the company and a protection and an income at some point. But does it help directly today? And should money be put back into, say, Luke's with us today, and his costs are very high, aren't they, Luke? But
not away profusely, I'm sure.
But that's an investment because hopefully with social media, as it is today, and he runs that. If that does one more deal a month, then you can pay your staff more. Yeah, you can then put a little bit aside for the future of the business and invest in it indirectly or directly, or whatever you want to do. Going back to the buy-to-let industry, I must start off by saying it's still a very fruitful business. Don't get me wrong, and for potential landlords wanting to buy long-term investment income, equity growth strategy, it's there. On a personal level, I've reined back a little bit because probably like a lot of landlords now, they're seeing the buy-to-let mortgage in some cases double. they have to look at the type of property. We had a couple of old style properties. Now, investment and maintenance, actually, no, not investment, perhaps maintenance costs have come in quite strenuously. And that has taken a lot of the profit away. And you need to make a conscious decision with EPC regulations being what they are. That could even change for the better in some people's eyes. You know, the type of property that a landlord needs to buy at the moment, they're going to have the good security in knowing they're going to be tenants waiting. There's no doubt about that. And they're going to get good rental incomes at the moment. There's no doubt about that. But does it give a month-to-month huge profit that it did maybe 2, 3, 4 years ago? I'm not sure. I do think, I think there are so many different. You touched on it on companies setting up a company and then buying it from that point of view. So there are different elements, but locally we are seeing some landlords, Matt, just stopping at the moment and not buying because I think they're just a bit conscious about the capital gains tax that may be being implemented.
I think there's a generation of people that bought in their own names and they've probably got quite low mortgages on them and they are now worried about capital gains tax and the rest of it. And they're either mortgage free or low mortgage, so they're not encapsulated so much by the Section 24. But more regulation coming and all the rest of it, it makes people get twitchy. I'm just wondering, if you're the ones that you've got, whether or not it would be, better potentially for you to dispose of those and inject that money into the business when we're heading into this time where there's a lot of regulatory change. There's probably going to be a recessionary time locally. I mean, I do a lot of research locally on other businesses and business owners and the rest of it. And there are a lot of people locally who have got, smaller outfits, maybe less than a dozen staff, half a dozen staff, maybe even completely owner run. But they are at an age where at some point they're going to want to, hang up the tools, so to speak. So, potentially you're in a good position if you've got like a capital reserves and you can deploy them, either buy them out or amalgamate them into your existing business or something. Yeah,
you're right. I mean, I've always had the philosophy that only buy something if you can afford two of them. And that was ingrained to me many years ago. Now, that means having those reserves in the company to protect the business. I mean, I used COVID. I mean, when COVID came about, fortunately, not by luck, but by design, I made sure we had enough money in the blinking bank to last because who knows what was going to happen. You can't plan for bad things to happen, don't get me wrong, but you do need to have your reserves there. And as you were saying, having the option to say, right, I'm not going to do that investment vehicle. I'm going to plough money back into the company, reinvest it for the goodness of the business. Because at the end of the day, it's about profit. It's not about turnover.
If your member of staff could, by investing 30 grand into a new member of staff, they can then return you that money. Like you're investing into Luke right now, aren't you?
Absolutely.
On the basis that person will return you money.
Well, I think he's asleep at the moment.
Yeah.
It's a bit quiet.
Well, it's because he's had to listen to us.
Oh, okay.
But I think that, investing into your staff as opposed to using that money to buy another buy-to-let property or something like that might, in this current market, be a very good investment if you can leverage that and you can monitor the performance of it. I'm sure you have like some KPIs or something and make sure that is, and if they can return you 3 times what they're costing, that's much better than a buy-to-let property.
Yes.
I think that there will be a lot of people that will start to dispose of them or maybe look at not buying more, as you touched on the basis that, that market is maybe a bit stagnant at the moment.
We've seen that, Matt. We've seen 1 or 2 landlords wanting to come out of the market. And of course, we, being selfish, we've gained there, Matt, because obviously they've put on the market with us.
Yeah.
So we've got the security of knowing if that market, I don't know what your own thoughts are. I think it may be, but it depend on the nearest and dearest government that get in. I don't know. But if the cost element for the landlord keeps increasing, I do think a lot of landlords will come out of the market.
Yes, definitely. I think they will, but I do think that will be an opportunity, no different to an opportunity I foresee in your industry, especially locally, to seize other business opportunities and the rest of it, and grow your business. Not necessarily open other branches, but not wipe out, but like eradicate some of the competition locally. Put yourself as a niche. I think that the same thing will happen with the buy-to-let market. There'll be lots of people pull out, but then there'll be lots of people that will buy those properties because they're in poor condition. The EPCs don't qualify for minimum rental, or you can't get a good mortgage on it.
But you worry about tenants then, don't you? Because there's not enough properties for tenants. And that's a different argument altogether. The
tenancy market is quite buoyant at the moment, and obviously you put stuff on and it tends to go very quickly.
Oh, yes.
But I think all of that new regulations, people leaving the market, makes people twitchy. And there's a saying from like Warren Buffett that's like, be hungry when others are scared, and be scared when others are hungry.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I think it's definitely, you're right to have the reserve funds and the rest to support the business, but there is a certain level, I believe, that is too much protection, if you like. So you can deploy that money, and don't forget, any cash you've got in the bank is generally losing its buying power anyway.
Very much.
So
doing nothing.
You can protect or invest, and there has to be a line between the two. Like sometimes I'm sure people, including myself, probably go too far one way and then too far the other way.
We're all different. Yeah, but it's funny with estate agency and with costs do rally because in fact, there's very little businesses out there that can do so much for the customer over such a long period of time without the guarantee of a fee at the end of it.
Yeah.
So if I give you the example, we might put number 10 Doris Road for sale. We might have it on the market for 16 weeks. We would have incurred a cost of, say, £3,000-4,000 marketing fee.
Yeah.
Notwithstanding staff costs.
Yeah.
Might get a sale on it, sale agreed, then fall through. The customer doesn't have to pay us anything.
No.
But now if you times that 5, 6, 7 times a month, it's a very impulsive business, and very, very few, I know you do, Matt, but very few people actually know out there that there is no guarantee for us to, solicitors get paid whatever, surveyors get paid whatever, the council get paid for whatever. We don't, unless the job goes through. So I'll come back to the conversion rate of the pipeline, the sales, how important it is that the sales go through. Having reserves there, and I dare say it's why a lot of agents did close down at certain times over the last 20, 30 years. Having reserves there is important, but I come back to it. There has to be an element of investment from any good director or whatever, managing director, because the team only want to work for a company who they can think is going places.
Yeah.
They don't want to work with someone who's
got
no aspirations or vision or, and as our model is not just sell the house, it's welcome the customer in, have a good customer experience, get to know them, work with them, not against them. And all that is very, very important. And going away from the corporate side, we're trying to instill a full service package from when they first come on the market to the day they move out.
Yeah. So I suppose it's very much like the no win, no fee type scenario, isn't it? No sale, no fee, essentially. And I wonder if you have any plans or
to change
that or to protect yourself against that, because it's a traditional model, but that doesn't mean that you can't change it.
You've just hit it out of the head, and you're so right. It's expectation or tradition or this is what is supposed to happen. And at some point down the line, and then there was a couple of estate agents in the past who have tried to initiate, say, for example, a withdrawal fee or an advertising fee or you've let us down fee, so pay us 500 quid because you take it.
Because the solicitors get paid.
They do. I mean,
do.
I joke about this, and some of them are friends of mine, but they're quite happy, Joe. We've got our fee. Off you go, Jordan. You don't get a penny. Ha ha. But obviously, it's not like that. But I know that when it's been introduced in the past to try and charge even say 200, 300, 400 quid as a withdrawal fee, doesn't go anywhere near to what we've incurred. Now we can't have it both ways, because on the other spectrum we might get a large fee on a house which we didn't expect to go through, and it's
Yeah.
gone through, and happy
Exactly,
days.
yeah.
So
Yeah, it is a bit peaks and troughs, I think. And we don't do estate agency here for that very reason. I quite
you'd
like
be very good at it.
I quite like the stability of businesses and built on volume as well, like a small amount of money from a lot of people, fairly low-ish profit margins, some bits of our business, but they're steady. I like the estate agency model because you get those peaks and troughs and you get those large amounts of income, but its peaks and troughs are really hard to manage, which is where you come back with your big reserve fund.
But they're inseparable, Matt. So you can't have all those good times without dropping. And when you do have those troughs, you learn more, and then you can go and do it in a bit better way.
I suppose it's about making sure the peaks and troughs aren't as bigger peaks and troughs, like trying to level the land a little bit, so that you don't have these like massive disparities between like here's the good times and here's the bad times. If you can kind of bring them down, I mean, obviously, ideally, if that can stay out there, but bring those, level those out. And I think if it was me, like what I would do in your shoes is I would be right now probably trying to create the niche and protect your brand and make sure you invest in the business, but also try to grow that lettings department, because that I think is a very good leveler for the business to get rid of those troughs.
Yes, it is. It was there. We weren't sure back in 2006, but we started a lettings department, and thank goodness we did. It's the foundation of the business.
Yeah. I think you need those things, and look for those other avenues where you can pick up those loads of little fees and stuff like that. I think they're really good ways of getting rid of the peaks and troughs. But yeah, hopefully you can
put the fee up to about 4% per transaction is what I'm thinking. I'm joking. You never know.
Well, if you can justify it, that's the thing. If you're the best, then you can justify anything. Back to my Apple example, their iPhones are double the cost of other people's, and maybe they do the same function, but actually it's a perceived value in what you're going to get out of it, isn't it? So,
absolutely.
But yeah. Well, thank you very much for coming on today, David.
Thank you.
It's been really good. And I wish you all the best with it. And how do people get hold of you or find your website or whatever if they want to come and have a look at what you've got for sale and stuff?
It is all on our website, www.davidjordan.co.uk. All our direct lines, email addresses, everything you need will be available.
Yeah, and lettings-wise, that's Dawn?
Same, Dawn, Dawn and Steve. Come in and see them. They're always there. Anytime. Our showroom's there, open 6 days a week, Monday to Saturday.
Yeah, brilliant.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Cheers, Matt.
I hope you really enjoy getting stuck in with David there. It was interesting to see that David obviously has some ideas and the rest of it about how to kind of level out his business and the rest of it. And there's always that fear of like investing the money. Shall I buy the buy-to-let property? Shall I pull out of that? Shall I put it in the staff? How much reserve fund is it? So it's a really interesting journey for him, and I think he really needs to get kind of niching out and building his brand and making sure that he's protected by leveraging his skills and his ability in the market and prepping ready for those new regulations that are coming in and putting him a tier above all the others. I'd be really, really grateful if you could subscribe to the channel. Just press the little button in the corner, subscribe, hit the like button, give it a little tickle or whatever you want to do. Or if you really want to, please do comment below. Maybe a type of guest that you want me to have on the podcast, maybe a question I didn't ask, whatever it is, please comment below. That will help this video or these videos get out to a wider audience, and the algorithm that is YouTube, the almighty algorithm, will then suggest us to other people, and then we can help more entrepreneurs and business owners and senior people through their journey and set their goals.